Today I'm going to answer a question that somebody asked me by email, and it is a bit of a frequently asked question, quite relatively frequent in the grand scheme of things, I think. It's about chicken, raw chicken, specifically feeding your dog raw chicken, and whether it is safe to do so due to the potential risk of a condition that's really hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to refer to it as, it's like the dog version of Guillain-Barré syndrome. So like Guillain-Barré syndrome in humans is when they get paralyzed, like starts at the bottom and it just starts working its way up. They're just paralyzed from the waist down or whatever. So it can happen in dogs, and it has a long-term something neuritis, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, for the sake of this TED Talk, I'm going to call it Guillain-Barré syndrome, but I'm not talking about Guillain-Barré syndrome, okay? I'm just talking about the dog version of it. Anyway, we won't go into too much detail there. So the reason that I get asked, is it safe to feed dogs raw chicken, is because of this little study, and I accentuate the term little study done in 2018, where they apparently found a link between raw chicken necks specifically causing Guillain-Barré syndrome in dogs. Now, the media really got a hold of this story, and it was all over the news, and everybody read it, and everybody went, oh my god, you can't feed dogs raw chicken because they get this, you know, nerve paralysis thing, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I want to talk about why I personally don't have an issue with feeding dogs raw chicken and think it's perfectly safe. But I think the reason that question persists, and that, you know, every other week someone walks in and goes, oh, but you can't feed a dog raw chicken, most of the time, because it, you know, you can't feed chicken necks or whatever, most of the time it's because they've read that article, like ABC shared it, a million other people shared it. It was just one of those, like, probably went a bit viral, to be honest, and then it just hangs around. That misinformation just hangs around, and I'm calling it misinformation because there are a few reasons. For starters, it was a really small study. It was only like 20 something dogs or whatever, and then the control group, like the other group, was all staff dogs and client dogs or something, and it was only another like 40 something dogs. I don't know, it just seems a bit to just use staff dogs as like the comparison, like we'll just grab the staff dog, like maybe there could be a little bit of bias there, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was a really small study, and they, I mean, I don't even know where to start. A bacteria that can be found in raw chicken called Campylobacter, I think that's how you pronounce it, and this is a bacteria that is in a lot of chicken, right? Like, you go test some chicken, you probably find a little bit of Campylobacter. And this is the thing with bacteria, is bacteria in itself isn't necessarily a problem. There's bacteria everywhere. There is lots of bacteria all over the joint, on the chicken, on the meat. You go test a random group of dogs' feces, you're gonna find Campylobacter, you know? Like, it's everywhere. So bacteria in itself is not necessarily a problem. It can be. Often bacteria becomes a problem when the dog has, you know, your average healthy dog can handle a little bit of Campylobacter, no problems. But it's often when there are other things going on affecting the dog, and there's kind of this stacking effect of issues, and then bacteria can become a problem and cause illness. You know, like maybe the dog is older, or it's been exposed to some other environmental toxins, or it's a little bit overweight, or it's had a recent course of antibiotics, or whatever, you know, maybe it's just had a few little issues stacked up, and then all of a sudden that Campylobacter that it got from a piece of chicken makes it sick. That can happen, you know. I always say to people, choose your own adventure, man. You know, like, there is risk with raw feeding, there is risk with everything. There's risk with feeding kibble, you know. look how many recalls there are on kibble and all kinds of weird shit that goes on there. But 100% there's a risk when you raw feed. There's a risk of contamination, there's a risk of bacteria overload, there is a risk when you feed bones, there's a choking risk when you feed bones, chicken necks, of course. Like, I always say to people, know what kind of a bone eater or a treat eater your dog is and feed them appropriately, and that's up to you. You know, people always ask me what's the safest or what's the best, or, you know, I can't answer that. Every dog is different. If you've got a bulldog that tries to scoff down, you know, the last end of a turkey neck, yeah, they can choke on that. Of course they can. But that's your responsibility as an owner, as a pet parent, to know what bones are safe for your dog. And, you know, it might be a bit of trial and error in the beginning. That's why I always say to supervise. If you're not sure, supervise. I can leave Lily with a bone and I know that she'll sort it out, you know. Having said that, she's broken a tooth eating a bone when I wasn't supervising, and she's then had to have that tooth out. There are risks with everything. Choose your own adventure. Choose the level of risk that you are comfortable with, and it's your risk. Anyway, back to the bacteria. So there's Campylobacter in most chicken, like it's there, that's fine. And there's Campylobacter in lots of dogs' guts and poo, because, you know, that's just life. But dogs can get sick from bacteria if maybe they've got few other things going on, and there's this stacking effect, and then all of a sudden bacteria that, you know, is like quite normal, can make a dog sick. So where was I? yeah, so they found Campylobacter in the chicken, they found Campylobacter in all the dogs' poo, most of the dogs' poos, whatever, and they found some kind of correlation that a large percentage of the dogs that did get this Guillain-Barré syndrome had consumed raw chicken necks lately. So, you know, take from that what you want, but there's a lot of, if you go Googling and reading all about this, there's a lot of sort of rebuttal to this study as to the holes in it and why it's not really a valid, like even at the end of the study says like, yeah, we maybe found a little bit of a link between this and this, but like, you know, personally, I fed my dog raw chicken every day until, you know, I realized it was causing her itchy skins, and now I don't, but I don't have any issues with feeding raw chicken. And yeah, there is a risk, but it is extremely low, not even worth mentioning. And the reason that this one sticks around is just because, I think, just because that study got a lot of media attention and a lot of people read it, and people just kind of cling to stuff like that. They're like, oh yeah, I read that thing, oh yeah, raw chicken, bad for dogs, okay, great. And that just sticks. You know, no, people don't look any further into it other than, you know, so-and-so who did this study in 2018 said that chicken necks causes Guillain-Barré syndrome in dogs, you know. And he didn't. He actually just said, yeah, it could be likely that, you know. And we don't know so much about what else was going on with the dogs that did get sick, and also with the control dogs, what else they were fed, you know, what else was happening with them. Were they indoor dogs, outdoor dogs? I think one of the rebuttals talks about, you know, snake bites also cause those kinds of symptoms. So, you know, half those dogs could have been bitten by a snake, you know, whether the condition itself is very difficult to diagnose. So it's never actually like, oh, that dog definitely had that. It's just that, oh, it had these symptoms and it definitely could have been that. So there's, for me, too many question marks about whether or not, you know, they can say with confidence that that causes that, or they can't say with confidence that that causes that. So I don't know if I just made that a lot more confusing or any clearer, but my take on the question is, can you feed your dog raw chicken? Yes, you absolutely can. It's not going to cause any problems, but that's my humble opinion. And like I said, there is always a risk with absolutely anything, and anything is possible, and you choose the risk level that you're comfortable with when you're choosing what to feed your dog or whatever, and that's, you're assuming the risk, and it's a you problem, not a me problem. So that's my take on it. Thanks.